Welcome, everyone. It's Tim Wiggum here speaking to Chase Barris. We have known each other for a long time. And then from my perspective, I was blessed with the opportunity to provide some coaching and accountability partnership and friendship with Chase across the pond, across the Atlantic Ocean. And before we've known it, it's almost 2 years since that we've been having conversations. And Chase and I wanted to share our conversations with more than just each other. We feel that that's something we're called to do. So maybe if I ask Chase to introduce himself for the benefit of this introductory podcast episode, and we'll take it from there. Chase, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes. My name is Chase Barr. I'm actually from South Louisiana, and like Tim said, we've been knowing each other for quite some time now. And over the last couple of years, we've shared some key insights and had a ton of meaningful conversations. So we just hope and pray that we can affect, if we can affect anyone's life in a positive manner, then hey, this is all worth it.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I mean it's difficult to do justice in a couple of minutes to the number of different topic areas that we focused on over the last year and a half to 2 years. If you were to just grab one highlight or perhaps topic that has come up many times with us, Chase, just putting you on the spot here as we do, what would you say that would be?
Tim, I guess to answer your question and kind of continue the introduction, I think, so I have 2 kids and a wife, and we just recently purchased a vacation getaway / short-term rental. And on top of that, I'm an operations manager of a company. I would say the main topic right now would be surrender. And that's just simply surrendering to God. Now, with surrender, of course, there's a ton of lessons learned and a ton of growth curves that you experience along the way. But without surrender, we find ourselves battling with expectations, right? With human expectations.
Yeah.
And whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's Easter holiday, and just having expectations as simple as who may show up, who may help out setting up, who may help out with the cooking, who may call and wish you happy Easter. Just human expectations in general, that I've learned over the years that it's so much easier just to give everything to God and surrender, and not put as much pressure on humans. Because if there's one thing that we've learned about humans, is that they'll let us down. But if we dig a little deeper, they're letting us down because of our expectations for them.
I did some introspection in the last 5 to 10 years and did an exercise to try and uncover and understand my purpose, why God has placed me on this planet. And one of the most striking and clear responses that I got to that exercise was inspiration. So inspiring myself and others to unlock potential, to uncover and understand what else we can do to grow not only ourselves but those around us, and to add value to the places of the home, so family, places of work, so work colleagues, others that we interact with, and places where we recreate as well. So whether it's the sports field, whether it's hiking with colleagues, whether it's mountain biking, paddling, or going to the gym, the opportunity to influence and inspire the environment, the collective, is a big part of what I feel called to do. Hence my role as a performance coach, and my continued endeavor to grow at home as a husband and father, as a brother, as a son, as a cousin. There's always an opportunity to inspire others, and often it's when we least feel like it. And this ties into Chase's point about surrender. There is a responsibility, I believe, on all of us to realize our blessings, create some perspective, particularly when we feel we're having a bad day or we're being hard done by. Stepping back and actually considering how privileged and blessed we are in the Western world compared to so many millions of people who have a daily struggle and or live below the poverty line. So I guess building on Chase's intro about surrender, I have a real focus on inspiration. And if I consider that topic, and Chase and I have discussed it many times, there's the component of what inspires us, from what do we draw our inspiration, and then indeed, how do we pay that forward and inspire others, which then becomes a developmental loop, if you like. We're looking for inspiration, and we're also looking to inspire others.
You say my oldest daughter, she's very interested in interior designing, and we've kind of shown and taught her some creative inspiration with the recent short-term rental that we bought, because that's obviously, it's a part of the business, it's a part of the game, but it's also when purchasing the short-term rental and basically building it up and designing it up to the point where it sets itself apart from the rest. There's a lot of design idea. There's a lot of interior designing that goes into it, and that's been one of the funnest parts of this process, is just getting her to help out with interior designing selection. So there's a ton of things that's going on right there, right? There's creative inspiration, because she is my inspiration. She's a huge reason. She's my first daughter. She's a big reason why I basically am where I am right now. And how fun is it to give back and show her that, hey, it's okay not to settle. It's okay to get hungry and get creative, and to not only attain and achieve your goals, but to be able to follow in mom and dad's footsteps, and be able to be shown the process to get there. So on top of inspiration, I think there's the wisdom aspect also, right? So with surrendering and with inspiration, I also think there's a lot of reflection that needs to happen to even be able to get to the point where you decide you need to surrender. So we can all, it's I think the easiest part is to come up with the great ideas, but one of the toughest things is to sit back, reflect, know your limitations, and then at that point come up with a strategical plan and implement and attack. But reflection is the slower part, right? Is the it's the wiser thing to do. So sometimes for, A-type personalities and people who are just extremely driven, sometimes it's tough to take a couple steps back and reflect and game plan and re-strategize, or maybe even pivot.
You and I have talked extensively about meditation and how that comes up time and time again from the likes of Tim Ferriss, Tony Robbins, and many others who have explored and interviewed some of the most successful people on the planet. and what has helped them to achieve and then sustain that success, whatever your definition of success, by the way, as we know. So reflection, particularly for A types, as you say, Chase, and meditation, and how difficult it is when you're driven and you have high energy to actually take a time out, sit down, and deliberately focus on calming down your mind in order to be more composed, and ultimately a better human being. So that was one of the things that jumped out at me when you mentioned that. But just going back a step, you mentioned your daughter and your family, and something that you and I are completely aligned on is family first. Um, as Christians, as we talk about the family and God's plan for our family, um, and then the importance of placing family first in the context of a busy lifestyle. So with work commitments and other aspirations and commitments, the challenges for someone who's busy in life to make time for worship and make time for the family and make sure that that priority does not get compromised. It's a real challenge, and I know that something that you and I have discussed in terms of sharing our thoughts and our challenges and our reflections with more people is for exactly that reason. There are so many men who struggle with that balance. Certainly something I've struggled with, something you've struggled with. I think it's important to accept that it is a challenge, and then share and discuss ideas for facing that challenge, and keeping priorities in balance, making sure that we share with our family and with others where there are concerns, and where we need to get support, um, because it's not easy. It's not easy. The pandemic presented its own challenges, in that to some degree we were all forced together for protracted periods of time when that wasn't familiar. And then as we see ourselves emerging from the global pandemic back into the busyness of life, it's perhaps slightly more familiar, but no less challenging issues around making time to do the most important things. So I know that the inspiration for putting together a podcast where we share our thoughts and conversations about this topic of family and reflection was very much there.
The book Game Changers um, is a great one that I've been listening to the audiobook recently while traveling back and forth from the vacation getaway while we have been prepping it, and it's been a great one. There's obviously a ton of research that was conducted, but just small habits that basically are what the book is titled to be, and that's Game Changers. And Tim, we've harped on it before. It's always the small things that lead to the big outcomes, right? And just something as simple as, so this morning, step one was um, take antioxidants, take supplements, vitamins, nootropics, do a little stretching,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then just kind of do some deep breathing, meditation, and prep for this call in that sense. And then, of course, that's the discipline aspect of it, right? That to me, that's what most humans, most men struggle with
Mm.
in general. Um, and then obviously, as we build these habits, we never look to stay stagnant. We always look to level up. And I think leveling up, as we get deeper and deeper into the growth process and reflection and wisdom, one of the major things that's probably the toughest to do, Tim, is setting boundaries.
Mm.
Um, because the discipline aspect of it, you can deal with most of that yourself. That's most of that is a mindset. Most of that is internal. Most of that is choices and decisions, right? But when it comes to surrender and setting boundaries, when you analyze those aspects of life, you start dealing more with emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And if obviously if your mind is not stronger than your emotions, then that's when choices, the quality of your choices become degradable, right? The
Mm.
quality of your choices, it's not what it should be. Um, so setting boundaries is, I think, is another great one. Just that'll eventually lead to a greater quality of life, a more improved quality of life. Um, there's so many things, so many distractions in the world now
Mm.
that we've simply come accustomed to and that have just simply become second nature to us.
Mm.
So it's obvious how much time we spend staring at a screen, right? Whether it's a laptop, computer, iPad, phone, TV,
Yeah.
a screen. A screen is a screen, right? On most screens, they have advertisements. Most screens are just very distracting as far as leading you to a different thought to distract you from your disciplined schedule
Mm-hmm.
and what you should be doing. The next thing you know, 15, 30, 45 minutes to an hour go by, and you go back to that reflection word and you say, hey, what exactly did I just accomplish here? What good? What choice did I make here? What intentional choice did I make here that led to my discipline schedule and the goals and tasks that I'm looking to accomplish? Um, so those boundaries, going back to those boundaries, I think that's huge with electronics. It's more of a big deal with relationships than anything else.
Yeah.
Because as you and I have discussed before, Tim, there's a ton of people in our lives who we're very, very thankful for,
Mm.
but that we have to be cautious in a sense that we have to set boundaries, whether it's emotionally depleting,
Mm-hmm.
and we know that if you have great intentions, you look to offer to lend a hand. But there's possibilities that they may take advantage of that. So setting those boundaries, they're big. They're huge. They're important. And it's like we've always said before, you and I are looking to get on this growth process together. And as you've said, you basically kind of define somewhat of a mission statement. Our goal, our plan is we've affected one another in such a positive aspect that
Mm.
we're looking to help other people too also. And I just think that's a great thing.
Mm.
Now, it we couldn't be any more thankful, even if we could affect one more life, right?
I really like your point about boundaries, and it reminds me of the very simple kind of model that jumped out at me a couple of years ago when I was reflecting on the performance improvement process that I've been involved with coaching in the energy sector for the last 10, 20 years. And that model we've discussed around mindset, method, and mood set, or another way of looking at that is performance belief, performance process, performance climate. And when you mentioned boundaries, it reminded me of the importance of setting ourselves up for success, ourselves at home as individuals and at work, and then our teams, whether it's our family team, if you like, or our work team. And as you say, a charter or boundaries, um, a code of ethics, rules of engagement, all those kind of um, statements which we might be familiar with, they tie into a performance climate or a productive climate, a climate that makes you feel safe, psychologically safe, allows you to be vulnerable, makes you feel comfortable and heard, but also stretches you. Now, all of those things in combination, difficult to achieve, but so important, because performance belief or mindset, that's often driven by um, what we've been brought up to believe, and that can be everything from religion, or our spiritual beliefs, through to the country where we were brought up and how that's affected our beliefs around what's important, what's a priority, how do I interact with others, who I like or dislike. Um, so the whole mindset piece, and then, I love the way you were describing your disciplines this morning, Chase. Get out of bed step by step. With the aspiration to live a healthy life. You might do some stretching or some exercise. You might take on board some supplements, take on board some water, some hydration. You might meditate. You might listen to some biblical passage. You might read the Bible. You might listen to an audiobook. So different people have different performance processes, disciplines, or steps that progress throughout the day. But the other thing I was thinking, Chase, while you were talking there, and we've laughed about this before, is that, if you sort of graph anyone's progress through life, or performance and career growth progress, it's never a straight line. And you see some of these mock charts online. If you have a search, it's never a straight line. It's a messy squiggle. All of our lives are a messy squiggle to a large degree. I read something today which I quite liked, which was that experience is basically a euphemism for all of our mistakes. Because really, you gain life experience and you learn by getting things wrong, and then either self-correcting or listening to objective external correction. And that starts as babies, when we're learning to walk or learning to ride a bike or learning to talk, all these kind of things. So, one of the things that I know you and I'd be quite keen to impart to others is that, progress and improvement, it's a messy process. It doesn't go in a straight line. There's no such thing. However, what's very important is to never quit, and to always be true to yourself, and to do the right things for the right people, for the right reasons, at the right time, where possible. And no doubt through this podcast series, you and I will focus in perhaps more deliberately on certain key topics. But it reminds me that even this sort of introduction, from our point of view, is fairly deliberately, let's just get it going, and whatever comes up we'll discuss, because I think maybe too often we are guilty of waiting for the perfect time, or the perfect plan, or the perfect structure for a podcast episode, when in fact, let's be honest, it's more important to just share.
Yeah, Tim, I love the fact that you touched on the introduction, because it's content over structure, right?
Mm,
I think if we're going to reach and touch lives, they'll be definitely be listening to content
mm,
uh, over structure. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on is you mentioned those small habits and game changers, and you've also mentioned the word success earlier. And I think if I were to define my success on a very basic level, I would equate success to happiness.
mm,
Now, clean happiness, of course, because I know happiness, that word can be defined in many different ways also, but clean happiness, wholesome happiness.
mm-hmm,
And I think ultimately setting those boundaries and um, having enough discipline to live out those small consistent habits, they eventually lead to big success, big happiness.
Mm.
Um, being rich won't make you happy, but being happy might make you rich.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense, that you're striving, you're striving for your goals. You're living life exuberantly. You're passionate about what you do, your job. The word job almost becomes eliminated. It becomes washed out.
Mm.
You're just living your life to the fullest, carpe diem, right? On a daily basis, you're living it to the fullest. And then eventually, I think that attitude, that mindset, that perspective, that from a monetary policy, that'll make you rich as far as money goes. Time to me at this point in life, and I'm only 38 years old, but I don't think I've ever held a dollar bill that was more important than missing one of my kids' birthdays because I was out of country
Mm-hmm.
or out of state or simply not on land on a a drilling vessel. But time, it's time kind of it could be branched off,
Mm-hmm.
topics and subtopics of everything we've discussed to this point, as far as setting boundaries, uh, reflection, excuse me, surrendering. I think time, if you protect it or if you value it the way it should be valued, time is so important, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned the vacation getaway,
Mm.
the short-term rental, and I think all of this ties into that, right? Because if your goal is to make more money, then I think you should treat time even more importantly than you were before. And that goal to make more money, I think most people think of it in a sense that, hey, I have to work longer hours, I have to work more hours, which in all honesty, I'm learning for myself is the exact opposite, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you are putting more work in on the front end, right? But you're setting up for long term passive income, as passive as it can be. That is, so with this short term rental, that's kind of been the goal. Eventually, who knows when? One day
Mm-hmm.
I'll retire from my profession, from the energy sector, but that's been the long term goal. And I just think it's funny how you have that connection between every topic that we discussed to this point:
Mm.
the time, the surrender, the reflection, wisdom, all discipline, all of it. Doesn't it just all tie in together?
It definitely does. It definitely does. And I think the being true to yourself piece is so important because time is fleeting. And, you know, your life can go by in the blink of an eye. If you think about some of the memories in your life, and then how many years have already passed between from that memory to now, it can take you by surprise. And so time is key, and what you fill that time with. And what struck me as you were speaking those words of wisdom there, Chase, is that it's therefore so much more important that what you choose to do with your time is something that you feel you've been gifted with, or that you are called to do, or that has meaning.
When you're experiencing um, when you're experiencing those learning curves and those tough times, it makes it again much more natural, much easier to deal with when you have passion for the career that you're pursuing.
Mm,
Um, and I think it's all about, as we've discussed before, Tim. I think it's all about attitude, right? I think the right attitude is gratitude, because we've gotten to a point. I know we've mentioned it a few times before. We always have to adapt. We always have to pivot. We have to quote unquote think outside of the box. But that's much easier to do with the right attitude. Um, if we're going to talk about expectations, we can expect things to go wrong because they will.
Mm.
Especially if you're looking to achieve a certain level of success. So, with knowing that things will go wrong, you simply have to problem solve. But when going through this problem solving and troubleshooting process, that's kind of the journey. That's the growth phase. That's where you learn about yourself. That's where you learn about your team. That's where you learn how to implement after action reviews.
Mm.
That's where you just simply learn to improve. And that improvement process and that growth process, when you have that mind shift, and you have the proper mindset, you're not thinking emotionally.
Mm.
Again, it's easier to reflect and sit back and instead of complaining and whining about the growth phase and the lessons that God or that God's trying to teach us, it's easy to be thankful for that if you reflect in the right manner. If your mindset is where it should be, if you're meditating properly, you go from saying, "Oh man, I can't believe this happened to me today," to saying, "Wow, how lucky am I to have this happen for me today."
Yeah, spot on. And we've kind of laughed about it before, haven't we? Um, the more challenges we're facing, um, the more grateful we can be that God believes that we're up for the challenge. And in order to help us to grow, He's placed those challenges in our path. So, we've talked about that before, and I'm a great believer in that. Um, no one promised us that life would be easy. Um, and in fact, in those hard yards, that's where we find the diamonds. That's where we find those gems, those pearls of wisdom.
Yeah, Tim, I think it's funny how a lot of this goes back to God doesn't necessarily hand you your answer or your level up uh, growth badge on a silver platter, does he?
No.
It's, it always comes with pain, honestly, pain most of the time, a lot of times confusion, but if we stick with it and persevere,
Mm.
I think um, one good thing about emotion is if handled properly and if you react properly, the retention will be much higher, right? So I have an engineering background, but when it comes to people, there's no blueprint, there's no manual
Mm.
on humans.
Mm-hmm.
Technical aspects, hard parts, metal, cylinders, shuttles, you name it, hydraulic
Mm.
fluids. If it's to be any type of troubleshooting involved, then I'll get it very quickly. Unfortunately, humans sometimes don't even know how they'll react.
Mm.
So then you have to be smart enough and not to mention compassionate enough to a certain extent to where you earn their respect, because that's what it all comes down to. Um, Earn their respect and then lead in a proper manner. And there's obviously a whole plethora of advice that can be given when it comes to just leadership in general.
Mm.
But I think over time, as far as career progression goes, it's like you said, it's taking those growth curves and applying them. Um, and then these experiences that you're discussing that kind of stick with us over time, um, those are probably better than most degrees. out there that universities and colleges have to offer, right?
Mm, mm,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, man, it's uh, I guess in summary, it's being thrown in the fire at a very young age in our careers, and obviously there's a ton of experiences that we've gone through, not only in our careers but even pre-career stage, that have kind of sharpened the sword, so to speak, and led us to the point that we're at now, to be able to not only level up in our early career progression, but even now, right? It's Tim, it'd be very, very easy for us both to just kind of sit back and say, "Hey, we did well.
Mm-hmm,
We did well. I'm good to stay right here in this spot for the next 20, even 30
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
years." But there's obviously a certain force, hence the reason why we're on this call right now. But I think there's more of a godly driven force that's behind this, to not only affect and grow, but affect and grow and fill our cups up to the point where it can overflow into other people's cups. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like intention and a good heart is also extremely hard to come by these days. Honesty, integrity, good intention, just strong character. Um, it's very hard to come by these days, and I don't know about you, but I'd love nothing more than to just affect the world in a better way, to leave it better than I found it, right? To leave it better than the day I was born.
Mm,
And I think what the world needs more than anything else is just morals, integrity,
mm-hmm.
just to be lifted off the ground and given a high five. That might be all it is.
Yeah, I mean, really well said, Chase, and yeah, really, really valuable points. I love the metaphor you use there of the cup overflowing, and you know, our cup is pretty full from conversations and learnings, and actually sharing that and overflowing that to others is pretty key. And one of the things I've really enjoyed is how we've closed our coaching conversations in prayer, which has felt very congruent and authentic. So yeah, I agree with your points about leading with courage and acting with integrity and sharing um, our points of principle and our Christian care. Um, I'm going to go ahead and just pray in closing. And thanks for your time, as always, Chase. Lord,
You're welcome.
we come before you today and we express our gratitude for creation. We thank you also for the opportunity to share our wisdom with others, those who are younger, who might be walking a similar path, um, those who might benefit from shared experience. We thank you that we feel inspired and guided and called to do this. We thank you, Lord, for the energy that Chase and I feel to do this podcast and to share our thoughts with others. We can feel it. We're grateful for it. We don't know where it will take us, but we feel called to do it. And we just pray for your ongoing inspiration, energy, support, and of course, to hold us true to this path that we're being led to follow. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amazing words.